any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think what's interesting is viewing the sales world as I view it. I think we're going to have less salespeople than ever before. And I think the world of selling is changing. Getting through to somebody, making cold calls or even knocking on doors, it's harder and harder. People don't want to talk to salespeople, don't need to talk to salespeople.
Welcome to the Pivotal Leader Podcast with Gina Trimarco, featuring lively interviews with CEOs, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who share their stories and best practices for shifting business from problems to profits. Sit back and get ready to pivot.
Hey everyone, it's Gina Trimarco, Chief Results Officer of Pivot 10 Results, a strategy and training company that helps businesses shift from people problems to performance results. Each week on the Pivotal Leader, I feature inspirational and really cool leaders who know how to positively impact their customers, employees, and brand through culture building. On this episode of the Pivotal Leader, I interviewed Tom Niesen, CEO of Acuity, who spent 14 years in upper sales management and marketing positions with companies like Polaroid and Fuji Film before starting his company in 1990. There, he built sales teams and began to understand how and why sales teams failed, the difference between effective sales processes, and what just sounded good and what it really took to create a superstar sales force. Today, he blends his own experiences with nationally proven training and evaluation tools from the Sandler Sales Institute, Objective Management Group, and Extended Disc to teach a unique brand of sales training and personal development. It's so unique and so engaging that Tom Niesen closes his own prospects at a rate that would make most salespeople green with envy. I'm green just reading this. Can't wait to ask him that question. Tom can frequently be found on the road conducting in-house workshops for major corporations, and he is regularly asked to assist in the training and development of sales trainers nationwide. He helps industry leaders formulate successful management, sales, and prospecting strategies daily. Top executives from Tyco, Heidelberg, and Coldwell Banker have all benefited from Tom's expertise and experience, especially in the areas of new account acquisition and recruiting an effective sales winner. So let's learn more from Tom Niesen. Hey, Tom, welcome to the Pivotal Leader today.
Thanks for having me.
It's great having you. I love Dallas. Shout out to Dallas. I've got so many great connections in Dallas, and a lot of people have been on this podcast. You came highly recommended by a good mutual friend of ours who's getting he gets a lot of mention on this podcast. I think I should start charging him a sponsorship, Keith Walters.
Yeah.
So my new revenue plan, getting sponsorship. So let's dive right in. I'm really excited to talk to you because sales is a big part of what we do in our company too. And I know you do a lot of work with Sandler. And I think what really popped out at me, I love this phrase that Niesen closes his own prospects at a rate that would make most salespeople green with envy. I read that and I was green with envy. Can you expand on that? Because I think, you know this, most CEOs, most entrepreneurs, that's their biggest pain. We're trying to drive more revenue and get more sales. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I think if you look at what happens, and I can't really blame salespeople about this, but we always want to. In fact, that's why a lot of people call us and say, can you train my salespeople? And one of the things we always say is, you do know training is a waste of money. It always shocks people. And here's the reason why. If you don't have the foundation in the company set correctly, what happens is you have people that go out and get prospects. And if you have the owner of the company, president of the company, the VP of sales, manager, measuring one thing, and so Goddard's law is when one measurement becomes your goal, it ceases to be a good measurement. So let me give you an example of that. Let's say we got salespeople and the measurement we have is how many quotes they're doing a week. And you have a sales manager that the owner walks up to him or the president goes, how many quotes we do this week? And every week or during the week, the president says to the sales manager, how many quotes you do this week? Well, at some point, the sales manager is going to go to the salespeople and say, did you do any quotes this week? Any quotes this week? And if you ask somebody that for the next 2-3 months, that salesperson is going to be in front of somebody and go, look, I know you're not going to buy from me, but can I quote you anyways?
Yeah.
Right? That's what I'm being measured on.
Yeah. Because they're in the mindset it's a numbers game.
Right. And so you got the quotes going out, and guess what happens to their close ratio?
It diminishes.
Goes down to nothing.
Yeah.
And now let's train them on closing. It has nothing to do with closing. I've always looked at it, and sales should be a science. You've probably heard of lean manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
I believe there's such a thing as lean selling.
Mm-hmm.
And so my close ratio is, and people ask me this, and I really do say it's got to be 99%, because I'm probably going to exit you out of my system in the first meeting if I don't feel you're a fit for me.
Yeah.
I'm a fit for you. So I'm not going to waste time. And even if I do, if someone says, we just want some training, can you give us a price? I wouldn't even put you in pipeline. I'll send you email your price, and I'm not interested in a beauty pageant, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. I think that's, we started at the top of this. You said, training's not worth it. And we call ourselves a training company. So that hurt for a second. But I understand what you're saying, because we go through that all the time, that people just want that. They want a price. How much is it? This is what we need. And there's really a bigger problem going on. And so it's frustrating. We don't want to work. We don't want to work with you either. And I like that you call it, what did you call it? A beauty pageant?
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. So I get that.
Quotes. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the foundation. You said if you don't have the foundation set correctly, what do they need to do that? So
my belief is, when I first started this company 23 years ago, I thought I was going to go to companies and give them help and help their sales force and train them. And that's how I started out, as a training company. And what happened is I'd go and work with a company, and let's say you had 10 salespeople, and I'd work with them really well for 3, 4, 5 months, and 2 people would improve and get better, and 8 people didn't change a bit, which bugged me, because I knew the training was good. It's working on these other 2 people.
Right.
But of course, it was bad for me, because if anybody walked up to you and say, is Tom's stuff any good? You'd go, works 20% of the time. Right. So not good for me for referrals.
Right.
So I would start looking at people totally different. And I got my organization to a point where I could go into a company and go, out of your 10 people, we're only going to work with 2 of them. Now, if you want the other 8 people to sit in on the training, that'll be fine. We're not going to charge you for them. And so I'm not going to be responsible for their outcomes. The problem with that, we found, was we trained those 2 people. They got better, more confident, stronger, and they go, hey, I can be better, but not with this company. Right? And so
you just train them out the door.
To train them out the door, train them to leave the company.
Yeah.
So I started looking at, if you don't have the right processes in place to support the people, how you pay the people, how you motivate them, how you coach them, how you measure their success. Are you just asking them, did you get a quote today? Or are you looking at the behaviors, leading indicators, and lagging indicators all together and saying, where do I need to help these people? Do you have a process? I'll give you a good example of every time I ask a president or sales manager to write down their process, typically they give me steps. Sounds like this. First, we prospect for people, then we qualify them, then we demo them, and then we close them. Well, I could hire anybody and they'd have no idea what that means. Mm-hmm. So under each, those are just steps in the process. What underlies that? I'll give you a great example. A company called Hardee's here in Dallas we work with, and they sell produce to chefs at restaurants. Mm-hmm. And one thing we found out, that if the chef invites you into the cooler in the restaurant, right, and says, look at the cooler, because that's really where he keeps or she keeps all their food, how they store their food, fresh food, what have you. If they invite you in, your chances of closing the deal go up 70%. If they won't let you in the cooler, your chance of closing the deal is less than 10%.
Wow.
Now, with that knowledge, once again, when one measurement becomes a goal, it's a bad goal, right? But with that knowledge, a sales manager can now tell you, hey, by the third meeting, you need to walk in the cooler. And that's a, shortening.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Can we dive into that just a little bit? What's the psychology behind that of going into the cooler?
Oh, with them, it's with that type of business as a touch point. If you think about a chef, they control the kitchen. Mm-hmm. They run the kitchen. And so they're the ones in charge of ordering food, making sure the food stays fresh, making sure that what they're serving tonight is good. And so walking into their cooler would almost be like you saying, well, look, I got a great company here. Look at my books. Look at my accounting.
Right.
Look at my P&L statement. For you to open that up, number one, it's a level of trust, that you trust that I'm going to give you some input about that and help you. Trust that you're not going to use that in bad ways. So it's a level of trust. And so that's the psychology. If they get into the cooler, the chef trusts you, and now your chances of asking better questions and opening up go much, much higher up the food chain.
Yeah, and that's really what I wanted everybody to take away from that, is that, when someone opens the door for you, whether it's the cooler door or another door in your company, figuratively, that it is a big piece of the trust thing, that they want to let you in and see how you respond to further build that relationship. It's like if I let you into the theater that we own and I take you backstage because I get excited about, like, let me show you what we got going on. That means I like you.
Right. And so that's part of the process. Where are those catch points that you can see what level of trust you're at with the person, mm-hmm. as opposed to just giving a quote?
So what would your advice be for salespeople in how to find those catch points?
Well, and I think that's a brainstorming session you do with salespeople, but also do it with management. Do it with management and customer service. Typically, when we start that out, we'll sit down with management, CEO, presidents of companies, and ask them to create a sales map. What should happen? If you were a buyer of these washers, what should happen along the way? And we build it that way. So we don't actually have a salesperson involved in the beginning, because we really want outside people to help us build this map. And then we start refining it from there.
That makes a lot of sense. I want to shift a little bit on culture. I know that you focus on changing cultures and beliefs and processes. Can you talk a little bit about what you do with that? Because I'm a big believer in, a lot of times there's culture issues that are affecting everything else going on in an organization, especially sales.
Right. Yeah. And I think sales culture, I don't want to say is different, but a lot of companies I go into, they have a culture in their company, and then there's the sales department. Mm-hmm. It doesn't necessarily adhere to the culture of the rest of the company.
Right.
And I think that's 100% wrong. And I think it starts out with, my belief is, I don't like core values. I actually think they're worthless. And what I mean by that is, a core value, typically I go into a company and I hear a core value of, let's say, growth or education. Well, that word means different things to different people. Mm-hmm. But a core behavior would sound something like this. You must learn something new every week and teach something new to appear every week. Now, that's a core behavior. Anytime, if I'm your boss, anytime during the week, I walk up to you and say, what'd you learn this week? And after the fifth or sixth time of you saying nothing, you're either going to start learning or you're going to leave the business. Now, that being said, everybody, even not, if I'm your boss, it's one thing, but let's say I'm not the boss. Let's say I'm an accountant in the company. I can walk up to you and say, so what did you learn this week? I'll tell you what I learned. To me, what happens is you're either going to quit or you're going to start learning stuff. Mm-hmm. Culture, you have a good culture. I'll tell you, I know a lot of people always question me on this statement, but I'll tell you, if you're going to start building a culture, it'll take you 2 to 3 years. And you will know when you got it by the number of people that quit or you fire because of the culture. People will not stick around if you have a strong culture. They either love it or they hate it.
Mm-hmm.
They just live in it. Now transfer that to the sales world. So and it goes back to training. If I'm going to train your salespeople on a perfect 30-second commercial, right? Perfect 30-second commercial. And let's say we have that, but we also have the metrics laid out. In other words, that a typical salesperson at this company normally has 5 prospecting calls a week, normally sets 2 appointments with people they don't know a week, and does, let's say, 1 demo a month and closes 1 deal a month. Those are the metrics. Let's just say those are some of them. Those metrics should be known by everybody in the company, everybody, posted everywhere. What I mean by that is I would want, if you really want training to take effect, and it's probably with anything, culture's got to be there, because I want the accounting supervisor to walk down a hall and see past a salesperson and say to the salesperson, what's your 30-second commercial? And know it and know if it's good or not.
Mm-hmm.
Or I want if a salesperson can walk back to the shipping department and say, are you going to be able to ship that today? Then that shipping person should be able to walk to the sales department, look at a salesperson and say, are you going to make an appointment today?
Mm-hmm.
That's true culture.
It's a collaboration.
Right. And that's when training will start taking place. Because now if I train somebody on how to get appointments over the phone, or if I train somebody on a 30-second commercial, and everybody in the company knows what it is and is asking that salesperson, what's your 30-second commercial? The salesperson's either going to get great at it or they will quit because of the culture and they don't like it.
It's really making everybody accountable.
Right. That's what I mean is once you get and that's one of the things I think the technology today, good thing is we can now get a lot of metrics as related to sales. Where in the past we didn't, but now we can, and we can use those metrics to our benefit to help the culture.
I want to shift over to something that I just want to pose this question to you. So, Vistage comes out with their CEO confidence reports, and the one that came out at the end of December for first quarter, it says that the index for 2018 indicates high revenue growth and hiring. 83% of CEOs anticipate gains, while 71% plan to increase hiring. So that to me says, wow, we're planning for growth, and boy, we better have everything and have our strategies in place. And do we have the right salespeople? And do they have the right plan? Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think what's interesting is viewing the sales world as I view it. I think we're going to have less salespeople than ever before. And I think the world of selling is changing. I just published a new book called Call Center Success, because we have actually taken some companies that had outside sales forces and making it an inside sales team. Reason being is technology today is, number one, I'm 63 years old, and when I was probably 25, I could probably get through on the phone to people about 50% of the time or more. Mm-hmm. Today, it's probably 8%. So getting through to somebody, making cold calls or even knocking on doors, it's harder and harder. People don't want to talk to salespeople. Don't need to talk to salespeople. In the past, when I wanted to buy a new machine for my manufacturing company, I called 5 salespeople in and said, show me your stuff. What's going on? Tell me about new machinery. Today, if I want to buy a new machine for my manufacturing, I go on the website. I do tons of research. I have my management team do research. Then we narrow that research down to 2 companies we think we want to buy from. Then we call those people. Mm-hmm. So I believe that 60% or more of the sale is already done by the time a salesperson is contacted. Now, I want you to think about this. How many salespeople get on the phone or drive over to that company and meet with them and never go on the website and do research on that company?
Oh, such a pet peeve of mine.
Oh, my goodness. And you think about it, and it's funny because I talk to them, and they say, well, why should I do that? And I go, you could walk into a meeting like this. Hi, it's nice to meet you. I want to talk about my machine. Or you can walk in a meeting going, hey, I understand this company's over 100 years old and it was started by your father. Tell me the history of that. right?
Such a difference. Such a difference.
And salespeople don't use it. And see, in the past, we use salespeople for information and then the sales process. In my day, it was 60, 70% information and technical information I'm giving people. And they're getting 20% sales knowledge, let's say. Well, I think it's flipped. I don't think we need a salesperson to give technical information anymore. Mm-hmm. But they got to be great at moving the sales process and delivering a trusted advisor sales process. So I see that's changing. So I think people are going to hire more people. I think sales departments are going to shrink. Sales will go up, but sales department will shrink.
And so they're going to shrink, and they have to be good at moving the process. And with all this technology going on and the rising workforce that's so attached to their technology, I really feel like just the art of interpersonal communication is dying. And one of the things that I see in some of the work that we do, we do some sales training using improv. So we do improv based. How do we build rapport and create connection and be in the moment? I see more and more that people are struggling with that. Any thoughts around that, especially with the rising workforce coming up behind us, with 50% of the workforce going to be millennials by 2020?
Yeah, and I think that's part of what we need to get good at is how to communicate using texting, how to communicate better using the phone. How do you create those, what I call pattern interrupt? How do you interrupt the pattern people have of a salesperson or even a communication style? It's funny is someone might sit there and say, I was just talking to someone actually earlier today, said, we're all getting RFQs now, requests for quotes, and we're having less interaction. And my comment to them was, so what are you doing? And they said, well, we're giving them quotes. And I go, the one thing you should be doing is emailing back and saying, got your quote. I'm confused about it. I have one or two questions for you.
Yeah.
And at least starting it there. But we got to get good at communicating and being okay with communicating. I think a great example of this was at the end of the year this week, I needed to buy a car. Didn't need to, but I wanted to buy a new car. So I emailed 3 Cadillac dealers. I was looking at Escalade, and I said, look, I want to buy a car before the end of the year. This is what I have. I have a Tahoe. I want to trade it in. This is what I want. This is what I'm looking for. 3 of those people, I'm sorry, it must have been more than 3. 3 of those people emailed me back and said, well, come on in, and we'll be glad to talk to you. And I emailed them back, and I said, I'm out of the country. I'm not going to be back in the country until January 28th. I want to walk into your dealership and in 20 minutes walk out with a brand new car. So here's the car I'm turning in. This is the condition it's in. All 3 of them said, well, come on in, we'll talk, or give me a call on the phone. One person emailed me and said, not a problem. These are the 3 cars I have that match what you're looking for. With your trade-in, if it's what you say it is, we'll give you this, and I can do this and this for you. And anyway, so this communication went on with this person, and it was great communication, email communication. And finally, I called the person. We talked for a minute on the phone, and I said, fine, I'll be there. The other 3 people were totally out of the running because they would not communicate the way I wanted to communicate to.
Yes.
And I'm 63 years old. I should not be doing it that way. I should be going and seeing people. Right? But, you think about that. That is our world, and I think it's going to be continued. And so we've got to find better ways to build trust, communication through email, and it can be done. It was done with me.
Yeah. Well, I think we have to meet people where they are.
Right. I agree. And I think different people are going to be different.
I had a client the other night who was emailing me at midnight. So shame on me on email at midnight. Shame on her being on email at midnight. But she's so hard to connect with. So the fact that she was connecting with me at that hour, that's where I needed to be in that moment.
Right.
Because that's how I've been. It's a new relationship. They're already a client, but they have a big event going on tonight that our company is part of. So just knowing that that's how she needs to be communicated with. Or when someone says, I don't like email, don't send emails.
Right.
It's pretty simple. I think what happens is a lot of people get stuck in, well, this is the way I communicate, so I'm not going to bend to how someone else needs it. Do you have any other tips that you would offer for how we do get better at communicating?
I think you got to think about who you're talking to and what they want at the moment in time and where they're at. But also, you got to think differently. In today's world, the one thing, well, every world, the one thing is change is constant. And you can think about the different generations, right? We've got baby boomers. We have Gen Ys and millennials. Is that right? Or Gen X?
Gen X and millennials.
Gen X and millennials. Gen X, baby boomers, their number one thing was they wanted more money, right? Mm-hmm. They would work 40-hour days to get more money. Then we have Gen X, and they wanted a separated work-life balance. Mm-hmm.
And we like autonomy.
Yeah, right? Baby boomers never understood that. So what do you mean work-life balance? You got And now we have millennials, and they don't want work-life balance. They want a blended life. They want a life where, hey, if they're going to text you about some work, they will. And if at noon during the day or 1 o'clock, if they're going to go on Facebook, they're going to do it. It's a blended life.
Yeah.
And I think we got to understand that communication. But to that point, here I am, a baby boomer that bought a car over the email. So,
well, good for that salesperson. I did something similar. Oh, you and I think we car shop the same way a little bit. This is exactly what's happening, right? The buyer is doing all their homework, usually does most of that research, has kind of an idea of what they want. And so when they make that call or email or show up, that's your first buying cue. They want you, right? So that to me is like, I should be able to close that deal when someone comes to me, right? I should be able, unless they're not an ideal client. But I did that with when I went car shopping, and I literally went to several car dealers, including a Cadillac dealer. Horrible, like kept putting me in a car I didn't want to be in, didn't follow up with me, didn't say he was going to look for anything else. And then I went to another dealer, and I walked in and I said, this is what I'm looking for. I want this year, this mileage, these bells and whistles. I have a check. I'm ready to buy. I'm ready to do it today.
Right.
And that guy found me a car in 24 hours.
Right.
He literally called me and said, listen, I called my database, right? Like that's how good he was. He kept his database of buyers and always stayed on top of, hey, isn't it time for you? It's time for a trade-in. Come on, you want to get the next new. So he was always working that on the back end to get his current client base to constantly be with him. And literally within 24 hours, I got exactly what I asked for.
Right. And it's one of the things I always say, and you asked me for another tip on communication. I believe one is always have an upfront contract with people. And what I mean by that is let's have an agreement up front as to how we're going to work together. And this works through email. I mean, if someone emails me and says, I'm looking for some information on your training program or what you do, I'll email them back and I'll go, more than happy, I'll send you a couple pieces of information that should explain what you're looking at. Can we do this? If you do not like the information or you don't think it's what you're looking for, just email me no, and I won't bug you. But if it is, could we spend 5 minutes on the phone getting a little deeper into what you're looking for? Now, I email that back to that person. That person could say, no, I'd rather just look at it, and then I'll email you some questions. Okay, that's how you want to communicate. I'll work your way. Mm-hmm. So I think telling them what you want to do and asking permission to should we communicate this way, and they could say yes or no. Yeah,
I think that's a big one, the asking permission.
Yeah.
Which doesn't happen a lot. Also in your bio, you talk about, it talked about what it really takes to create a superstar sales force. You've talked a little bit around that, but when it comes to a superstar sales force, what does that look like?
Well, I think there's a couple things. Number one, we never want to be happy with status quo. Are we always growing? Are we always learning? To me, that's a key. And do I have people that have goals? To me, a salesperson without goals is not a salesperson. And I don't necessarily mean monetary goals, but they can be goals of where you want to be in 5 years. What do you want to, what do you want to know? And so I'm always looking for that person that wants to get better, grow. And that might be, hey, I want to get good at sales so I can then become a good people person to run an operation plant. But what's the growth? And if there is no growth, that's a problem. And if people are happy with where they're at, if I think about it, to me, the first thing people need to have are goals. Goals create desire. Desire creates commitment. Commitment creates what I call a workout program. You know, we were talking earlier, you worked out this morning, went for a long walk. I worked out. Currently I weigh 205 pounds. I used to weigh about 350 pounds.
Wow.
About 15 years ago, and a doctor said, I have a goal for you. I said, I'm not interested. And he said, well, you got high cholesterol, high blood pressure. You're going to become diabetic. You're going to die. And I said, okay, I'm into your goal now. And the first thing he said to me was, you got to work out. I want you to get on a bike and ride it for 30 minutes every day. And the first day I got on it, what was my attitude like? Terrible. I didn't want to do it. But when I rode the bike for 30 minutes, I felt much better when I was done. Same thing this morning. Now I run for an hour a day. I had a meeting in my office at 7:30, which means I had to get up. I live about 45 minutes away. So I got up about 5, ran, then got in here. At 5 this morning, I flew in from Tampa last night. I was not in a mood to run, but I did it anyways. I was not in the right state of mind, but I did it. How did I feel when I got done? I got better. I felt better.
Yeah. We
all have goals, and there's workouts that we have to do, things we do not like doing to get to our goal, right? If I could never exercise again in my life, I would not do it. But I know I need to do it.
Right. Right.
Same with sales. If I hate prospecting, never liked prospecting. The evilest thing in the world. I love sitting across from people one-on-one, but I can't stand prospecting.
Yeah.
But it's my workout program. I have to prospect to hit the goal. So, and guess what? When I sit down and I look at that phone and I got to start dialing it, I don't want to do it. But when I'm done doing my 10 dials, I feel much better about myself because I did a baby step to get to my goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to me, a superstar sales force, everybody has to have goals, and those goals should align with the department goals.
And that takes really good leadership.
Yep.
I had mentioned earlier that we use improv and improv skills from improv comedy because we have a theater. We use that in a lot of the work that we do, not just sales, but collaboration, leadership. Any thoughts around using improv in the sales approach?
Oh my goodness, it's all improv, isn't it? I think it's one of the greatest classes I think any salespeople could take would be go to an improv school and just take a course in it because it's all improv. A salesperson's job is to get in front of a stranger and roll off what those persons say. And here's the problem, I think, with a lot of salespeople. They don't listen well enough to answer the prospect correctly. This prospect says, I have a problem. And the salesperson immediately says, well, you shut up so I can tell you how I can solve it. and so stop listening to the guy who says, I have a problem. And the problem is because of this, and this. And by the way, I'm bankrupt, right? The salesperson never heard a bankrupt thing. And then it goes into a half-hour pitch. Improv, I believe, the course I took and what I've done is it teaches you to listen because the only way I can be good at improv is to totally listen to what you're giving me. And then I must respond. I must play off your response to me.
Right.
I can't play off a response that's playing in my head. And so it's a great tool for salespeople if they can get into it and learn it.
And thank you for that. And I'm throwing that question out more and more to our guests. You said it perfectly, but I'm always curious to see what the perception is because that's always a tough one for us because it's such a squishy kind of tool.
Right.
And it scares people. And if more people realize like how powerful it is, and it really does come down to that listen piece and training people to really retrain their brains to listen, because exactly what you said, when you're up in your head having a conversation with yourself and you can't hear anything that the prospect is saying, that's where you're losing the deal.
Right. And I tell salespeople all the time and salespeople hate this too. I always say, you got to have scripts in your head. And I mean, you got to have talking points as to your product. You got to have talking points to questions they may bring up. In other words, I tell salespeople, you should list all the objections you're going to get and have memorized in your head how you would talk about any one of those objections. You must have in your head pre-call planning them. These are the 5 questions I normally get, and this is how I'm going to answer. Mm-hmm. Here's the questions I'm going to ask. And if they respond this way, this will be my next statement. Because if you don't know your side, you can't listen to their side. And so being that, I totally am confident with myself. I'm on stage doing improv, and I'm totally confident with myself. And I already know where I can go and all these different avenues. I can take all these different things, whatever you say. I can totally listen to you because I'm confident, and I've got all these buckets already full. Mm-hmm. And I can grab out of any one of those buckets, and I can truly listen to you, and it can be a great comedy hour.
That's how I look at every sales call I'm on. they're usually filled with humor.
Yeah, they got to be.
To your point, I mean, you talked about this earlier. I mean, before I go into a sales conversation, I'm gonna understand the company. I'm gonna try to know as much about them as possible. I'm gonna try to know as much about the prospect as possible, and I'm gonna know my own stuff, so that I'm really going in and having a conversation that I'm not so focused in my head, that I can be 100% with that person, that I'm just there to roll with them.
Right.
This happened to me recently. I was, like you said, prospecting is not always so fun, but we have to do it. And so I was going through an old list and reaching out and the different styles that I know that they have. And I messaged one in particular via email, and we were trying to get on a call together. And she said, listen, I am just so busy. I have all your information on file. If we need you, we'll call you. And I said, I really just wanted to catch up with you. I didn't want to sell anything to you. I just want to see what's going on with your company. It's a hotel management company. And I was curious, have you acquired any new properties? What's going on in the market? I do a lot of work with other hotels. And she's like, oh, okay. So we got on a call just for a conversation. And by the end of the call, she was asking for a proposal. I mean, I didn't enter it that way. Kind of about disarming people into it. I really genuinely went into, because I'm about creating the relationship and building the rapport. It's the long haul of it, but that's what works for me, right? It's right. Also knowing what your own style is.
Right. And I think that if you go back to Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote a great little essay called The Law of Compensation in America. It was actually commissioned by government to write how you make money in America. And it's been paraphrased many times, so I'll use the same paraphrase. It's a 20-page essay. Anybody should download it. But it basically says to make money in America, you can make as much money as you want in America by helping other people make money first. Mm. And, when I get a prospect, my number one thing is, I'm here to help you. I don't care if I make a sale. If I can't help you, I'm the last person that's going to give you a price. So, it's what do you want? And if you can't open up to me and be honest with me, then we're ending the call real quick, because I'm here to help you. Maybe I can give you some advice and you don't need to spend any money. Mm-hmm. Send you in a different direction.
Yeah. That's great. I'm gonna find that and put that in our show notes.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Speaking of resources, I know you mentioned that you have a new book called Center Success. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, where can people find that?
That's in Amazon.
Do you have any favorite books or podcasts? Another thing I'm starting to get from our guests to kind of create this library of great resources.
I think a ton of books. I'm a book fanatic. I typically do 50 books a year. So
wow.
A great book, I think, if people haven't read it, Extreme Ownership. 2 actual Marine commanders in Afghanistan, and they talk about incidents that they had that maybe saved a life, killed a life, whatever, but different things they had happen. And then they analyze what actually happened. And then they take that and they show you how this would work in a business situation.
Oh, cool. And
it's a unbelievable fun read, good read, but it really is about ownership. And they talk about you need to own everything going up the ladder, down the ladder. And so it's probably the best book I've read in the last couple of years.
Okay. And did you listen to any podcasts?
No, I have here and there, but not really. I'm more listening to books or watching it. There's some great videos on our website that I create. So I'm always looking at people doing short 2-minute videos and watching.
Okay. And you also have a podcast that's going to launch soon.
Yeah, it's launching in April, and it's going to be Dallas Business Synopsis, and it's all about doing business in DFW, Dallas.
Great. Well, I'm excited to hear that when that comes out. And contact information for you if people want to learn more about you or your company or Sandler training or anything, best ways to reach out to you.
Pretty simple. It's Tom, T-O-M, at salesmadeeasy.com.
Easy enough. Okay. We'll list that website as well, right? Sales Made Easy. Okay, good. I really appreciate your time today, giving us your great knowledge on sales. I think this is really helpful. It's always such in need and what people are most concerned about usually, at least on the surface. So I really appreciate your time today to be on the podcast with me.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for inviting me. It's fun.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, all this information about Tom, we will put in our show notes so that if you want to reach out to him and some of the other things that we reference, you can find those notes for this episode on the pivotalleader.com. Pivotal Leader is a production of Pivot 10 Results, a strategy and training company that helps businesses shift from people problems to performance results. You can find this podcast on iTunes, and if you're an iTunes subscriber, please leave a rating and a review. That's really helpful. Feel free to email me any questions that you might have about employee engagement or customer acquisition at gina@pivot10.com, and I will email you back. And do you know a pivotal leader who should be on this podcast? Maybe that someone is you. Drop me a line and let me know. We're always looking for great and fun leaders to be on this show. Yes, fun's important. And until next time, if you're feeling stuck in your business, it's probably time to pivot.
You've been listening to The Pivotal Leader with Gina Trimarco, owner and founder of Pivot 10 Results and Carolina Improv Company. You can find show notes for this episode on our website at thepivotalleader.com. The Pivotal Leader is a production of Pivot 10 Results, a strategy and training company that helps businesses shift from people problems to performance results. If your company needs help pivoting to success, visit pivot10results.com or email Gina at gina@pivot10results.com. And until next time, if you're feeling stuck in your business, it's probably time to pivot.